Hello, and welcome back to Brian Crime Updates. Today, we are looking at the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, a case that began with one man's story about a sudden boating accident, but quickly turned into something far more disturbing. At first, it sounded like a nightmare at sea. A woman goes missing in the dark waters of the Bahamas. Her husband says rough waves threw her from a small dinghy. The motor stopped. The keys vanished with her. He was stranded, helpless, and unable to save her. But the deeper investigators looked, the more that story began to raise questions. Because Lynette was not just a missing woman from a boat. She was a mother, a daughter, a loved one, and a woman who had reportedly carried fear long before the night she disappeared. And now, one claim from her daughter Carly has shifted the entire case into a darker place. Carly says her mother once told her about a past confrontation with Brian Hooker. During that alleged incident, Brian reportedly made a frightening threat involving the ocean. A threat that now sounds far too close to the way Lynette disappeared. So, the question becomes harder to ignore. Did Lynette vanish because of a tragic accident? Or did a past warning finally become part of the present? Before we break down the timeline, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Brian Crime Updates. Here, we follow the details, the evidence, and the questions families are still waiting for someone to answer. Lynette Hooker's life on the water looked peaceful from the outside. The 46-foot sailboat called Soulmate seemed like a dream. It represented freedom, travel, and a life away from stress. Lynette loved the ocean. She worked on the boat, invested in it, cared for it, and saw it as more than a vessel. To her, Soulmate was a future she had built with her own hands. But a beautiful boat can still hide pain. According to people close to Lynette, the life behind that dream was not always calm. Family members have described a relationship marked by tension, control, and fear. Carly has said Brian appeared charming when outsiders were around, but his behavior behind closed doors was different. That detail matters, because many troubling cases begin with two versions of the same person. The public version smiles, talks, jokes, and blends into the community. The private version leaves loved ones feeling trapped. And in Lynette's case, the private version is now part of the investigation's shadow. On April 4th, Soulmate was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay in the Bahamas. Brian Hooker claimed that around 7:30 that evening, he and Lynette were in a small 8-foot dinghy when the water suddenly turned rough. He said Lynette bounced over the side and disappeared into the dark ocean. He also claimed that the dinghy's ignition keys fell into the water with her, leaving the motor useless and forcing him into a long struggle to reach shore. That is the story he gave. But not everyone accepted it. Local boaters began asking practical questions. They knew the area. They knew the water. They knew that parts of Aunt Pat's Bay are shallow enough to raise doubt about the idea of an instant, helpless disappearance. Some people wondered if Lynette might have been able to stand. Others questioned whether she might have reached land or called out to another vessel. Then came the delay. According to the timeline, Brian did not report Lynette missing until around 4 in the morning. That means hours passed between the alleged fall and the report to authorities. In any missing person case, time matters. At sea, time matters even more. A quick report can bring lights, boats, search teams, and a rescue effort, while hope is still strongest. A delayed report can change everything. It can weaken the search, blur the timeline, and leave investigators wondering what happened during those missing hours. That is why Brian's delay became one of the most troubling parts of the case. If your wife disappears into dark water, why would it take nearly 8 hours to get help? Why was there no loud emergency? Why were nearby people not alerted sooner? Why did the search not begin with the urgency people expected? Those questions did not come from gossip. They came from the timeline itself. After Brian reported Lynette missing, rescue efforts began, but even then, his behavior raised concern. After a short search, he reportedly returned to Soulmate and stayed there for a long period, instead of continuing with visible desperation. People process trauma differently. Some freeze, some go silent, some fall apart. Investigators know that grief does not always look the same. But silence becomes harder to explain when it sits beside a delayed report, a questioned accident, and alleged threats from the past. Carly's account added emotional weight to everything. She said her mother had once left Brian and gone to Florida during a period of separation. During that time, Lynette allegedly shared details of a frightening incident and a threat linked to being lost in the ocean. For Carly, that memory did not feel random anymore. It felt connected. It felt like a warning people should have taken more seriously. And it turned Lynette's disappearance from a boating mystery into a possible pattern of control. This is where the story becomes painful, because many families recognize the signs only after the worst moment happens. A partner seems charming in public. The home life tells another story. Friends see the smile. Children hear the fear. Neighbors see a polite wave. Loved ones know the tension that lives behind the door. Carly's description of Brian fits that troubling split. She described a man who presented himself one way to the world and another way inside the relationship. According to her, Lynette had reason to fear him. That does not prove what happened on April 4th, but it gives investigators a history to examine. And history matters when someone disappears under suspicious circumstances. The boating community also became part of the conversation. Some people who interacted with the couple said there appeared to be tension between them. Others believed alcohol may have worsened the conflict at times. On land, a person can leave a room, step outside, or call someone. On a boat, isolation changes everything. A boat can feel romantic in daylight. At night, in a private bay, it can become a locked world. No easy exit. No neighbors across the hall. No quick escape from a heated argument. That isolation is one reason investigators took a closer look at Soulmate itself. The boat was not just where Lynette lived. It may have been the last place where answers still existed. When the Royal Bahamas police force became involved, Brian's version faced more pressure. Authorities questioned him and examined the story he gave. They wanted to know how the dinghy became disabled, why the report came so late, and what happened between the time Lynette allegedly went into the water and the time Brian reached shore. One of the strangest moments came during a police reenactment on the water. Investigators took Brian back to the area to walk through his account of events. During that process, he reportedly fell overboard and injured his knee before being pulled back into the police vessel. His attorney said Brian was innocent and needed medical attention. Some locals saw the moment differently. To them, it added another strange detail to a case already filled with them. Still, authorities did not have enough evidence at that stage to charge him. Brian was released without formal charges. Soon after, he left the Bahamas. That move raised more questions. If Lynette was still missing, why leave? If he was committed to finding her, why return to the United States so quickly? To be clear, leaving the Bahamas does not prove guilt. But in the eyes of Lynette's family and many watching the case, it made his public image as a grieving husband harder to accept. Then the focus shifted back to Soulmate. The vessel began moving from the Bahamas toward Florida under the control of a private captain reportedly hired by Brian. For investigators, that raised immediate concern. Soulmate was not just property. It was potential evidence. If something happened aboard that boat, the vessel might hold traces. If the timeline was false, the onboard systems might show it. If someone tried to clean, move, or hide evidence, forensic teams might still find clues. So United States authorities stepped in. The Coast Guard Investigative Service began tracking the vessel. Aviation support from Air Station Miami monitored Soulmate as it moved toward Florida. Then authorities intercepted it roughly 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne. The scene became even more dramatic when the boat's engine reportedly failed. A Coast Guard cutter had to tow Soulmate through the Fort Pierce Inlet. Once the vessel reached shore, agents placed yellow crime scene tape around it. That image was powerful. The boat Lynette loved, the boat she helped build a life around, was now being treated as a possible crime scene. And if you are watching this on Brian Crime Updates, this is the point where the entire case changes. Because when investigators seize a vessel, they are not only looking for what someone says happened, they are looking for what the boat can prove. Inside the secured area at the Fort Pierce Coast Guard Station, forensic teams began examining Soulmate. They looked through cabins, bilge areas, outer sections, communication systems, digital equipment, and any space where evidence might remain. In cases like this, investigators search for more than obvious clues. They look for small marks, They check cleaned surfaces. They examine electronics. They compare movement records. They recover deleted or hidden data where possible. They ask whether the physical evidence supports the spoken story. And that is where digital evidence becomes so important. Boats often carry GPS systems, chart plotters, satellite devices, phones, radios, and navigation logs. Those systems can show routes, times, stops, and movement patterns. They do not care about emotion. They do not try to protect anyone. They simply record what they record. If Brian's version of events is true, the data may support him. If the data shows something different, then the story becomes much harder to defend. Investigators were believed to be looking closely at the movement of Soulmate, the dinghy timeline, and the communication activity before and after Lynette vanished. Even one mismatch can become important. For example, if a boat was not where someone claimed it was, that matters. If a device went silent at the wrong time, that matters. If a route looks deliberate instead of chaotic, that matters. If there was a gap before the report, investigators want to know why. As forensic work continued, talk spread among people connected to the boating world. Some discussed possible cleanup signs. Others wondered whether the cabins or bilge areas might contain evidence that was missed earlier. At this stage, the public still does not have every answer. But the seizure itself shows that federal investigators saw enough concern to treat Soulmate with serious attention. Then another major question emerged. Was there another vessel nearby? Authorities reportedly sought information about a second sailboat that may have been anchored close to Soulmate on the night Lynette disappeared. That detail could become crucial. A nearby boat means possible witnesses. Someone may have heard voices. Someone may have seen lights moving. Someone may have noticed a dinghy. Someone may have seen Brian before or after the reported incident. Even a small detail from another witness could break open the timeline. That is why investigators often ask for help from people who think they saw nothing important. In a case like this, a person might remember a sound, a direction, a time, or a movement that later fits into the larger picture. For Lynette's family, the idea of a mystery vessel nearby brings both hope and frustration. Hope, because someone might know something. Frustration, because every day without answers deepens the pain. Carly and the rest of Lynette's loved ones remain in a cruel place. They do not have a body. They do not have a full explanation. They do not have the kind of closure families deserve. Instead, they are left studying timelines, waiting on investigators, and hoping that evidence will speak where people have not. Carly has made her position clear. She does not accept Brian's story. She believes her mother's past fear matters. She has continued speaking out and cooperating with investigators because she wants Lynette remembered as a person, not reduced to a vague boating accident. And that matters. Lynette was not just a headline. She was a woman who loved yoga, the ocean, family, and the idea of building a free life on the water. She put her labor and her dreams into Soulmate. She believed the boat would carry her toward peace. Instead, that same boat now sits at the center of questions no family should ever have to ask. What happened in those missing hours? Why was the report delayed? What did Brian do after Lynette disappeared? What does the boat's data show? Was anyone nearby? Did the alleged past threat connect to her final known night? And will investigators find enough evidence to move the case forward? Right now, Brian Hooker has not been convicted of anything connected to Lynette's disappearance. That is important to say clearly. Allegations and suspicion are not the same as a conviction. But the questions remain serious. The timeline remains troubling. The family's concerns remain intense. And the federal seizure of Soulmate shows investigators are not treating this as a simple accident they can close and forget. For viewers of Brian Crime Updates, this case is a reminder that the smallest details often become the loudest evidence. A missing key, a shallow bay, a delayed report, a quiet return to the boat, a private captain, a federal seizure, a possible witness vessel, a daughter's memory of an alleged threat. Each piece alone might feel incomplete. Together, they create a pattern investigators will not ignore. And now the ocean, the boat, and the digital records may hold the answers. The saddest part is that Lynette's dream was supposed to be her escape. Soulmate was supposed to represent freedom, It was supposed to carry her toward a softer life after years of work. Now, it represents a mystery, a family's pain, a timeline under investigation, and a woman whose story deserves truth. So I want to ask you, and I want you to think about the details before you answer. Do you believe Lynette Hooker's disappearance was a tragic accident at sea, or do the timeline, the alleged past threat, the delayed report, and the federal seizure of the boat point towards something darker? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you want more case breakdowns like this. And subscribe to Bryan Crime Updates for updates on the investigations people are still watching closely.